Thank you very much, Rav Yoel. It is a great pleasure for me to be here with you here at Kerem. In particular, I thank Rav Gaon, Rabbi Yonasan Martin, the director of Kerem, and Reb Yoel Würzberger, the founder of Kerem, and Mr. Meir Levin, who the secretary who took care of all the practical arrangements. I mean, I thank you very much for saying that you're happy that I'm here, but I couldn't have gotten here without the practical arrangements of Meir. So, toda rabba. My subject is Rabbi Hasdai Crescas, Maimonides' greatest critic. And the program calls for 6 meetings, and our first subject is why criticize the Rambam? I mean, the Rambam, HaNesher HaGadol, why would someone want to criticize him? Why would a smaller eagle want to criticize the great eagle? We have, for example, Rambam in his introduction to Milchamot Hashem. He's generally considered among the philosophers the greatest follower of the Rambam. He writes, well, Rambam, I admit, he says was the greatest philosopher. So why should I write a book? The Rambam has already dealt with all these questions. And the Rambam answers, and he says, well, it's because Hazman maspik b'hotza'at ha'emet. As time goes on, we discover new truths, and therefore, even though we've had a great philosopher like the Rambam, a great Chacham like the Rambam, nevertheless, there are still new things that can be discovered. Rabbi Hasdai Crescas has a different point of view. He was a critic of the Rambam, as opposed to Rambam, who presented himself as a continuer, just completing things that the Rambam didn't manage to do himself. And Rabbi Hasdai Crescas has a critique. He lived 2 centuries after the Rambam. Rambam lived in the Muslim world. He was born in Cordoba, in Andalusia, namely Islamic southern Spain, in 1138. And then, when he was around bar mitzvah age, the family fled to Morocco, when, in fleeing the persecution of the Muwahidun, the Miyachadim, the Almohades, the monotheists who were not tolerant of the Jews. So Rambam's family fled from Cordoba to Morocco. Eventually, he visited Eretz Yisrael and finally settled in Cairo, in Egypt, and was a physician in the court of the great king Saladin. Hasdai Crescas was born almost exactly 200, maybe exact, because you don't know the exact date of Hasdai Crescas' birth. It could have been exactly 200 years after the Rambam, either approximately or exactly 200 years after the Rambam. And he lived in the Christian world. He was born in Barcelona, in northern Spain, which was under Christian control, and he died in Saragossa in the winter of 1410-11. He lived through the terrible massacres of 1391, the year of Shnat El Kana, Kufnun Aleph, in which thousands of Jews were murdered. And in fact, I normally don't speak about that particular topic, but given the situation of in Israel today and the massacres of Shmini Atzeret, I'm going to have one talk on the massacre of 1311, Shnat Kel Kana, which is the 5th talk on February 18th. Of course, because Rav Hasdai Crescas, at that time his only son was murdered in Barcelona. Despite all his attempts, Hasdai Crescas was an important courtier, an important advisor to the kings of Aragon. The kings of Aragon tried to save his son, and they tried to save all of the Jews. but they were successful only in certain places where the king had power. And I think I noticed a number of similarities between 1391 and the horrors of the situation in October 7th. So we'll have one talk will be on that subject. The other subjects will be next. In the second talk will be: is there a mitzvah to believe? Is there a mitzvah on emunah? Right. This is, I think, in terms of the toldot of halacha, this is the big question that Hasdai Crescas is involved in. He cited a lot in the literature, in the commentaries on Sefer HaMitzvot. They all discuss this question and bring down the views of Rav Hasdai Crescas. Is there a mitzvah to believe? And then the third talk is on the differences in the approach to the midrash of the Bira Doleket, the castle, illuminated castle, which the difference between the Rambam's view and Hasdai Crescas' view of how to understand that, the midrash about Avram Avinu. And the fourth talk is about the mystery of the Ibur. Is there a mystery of the Ibur in Sefer Or Hashem? There's a very interesting discussion about that. And then the discussion of the massacres of 1191, and we'll end the final talk on a more positive note, the mitzvah of Ahava, which Hasdai Crescas is very important, especially this had big influence on the Kabbalah, his views of Ahava. So now let's get down to the question of why criticize the Rambam. And the first thing to say is we'll see that Crescas had tremendous admiration for the Rambam, tremendous admiration. He always calls him Harav. You know, as far as Hasdai Crescas is concerned, Harav is the Rambam. Hasdai Crescas was a student of the Ran, right? Rav Nisim ben Reuven. And he was a student of the Ran both in halacha and both in machshava. But when he speaks about harav, he usually has in mind the Rambam. That's harav. Tremendous respect for the Rambam. But he had serious criticisms, and in the introduction to Sefer Or Hashem, he speaks about criticisms of Mishneh Torah and criticisms of Moreh Nevuchim. This is because Hasdai Crescas originally planned to write a two-part work. The book as we have it now is just Or Hashem, and Or Hashem is a philosophical book, an anti-Maimonidean philosophical book. But he originally had the idea to write a large work called Ner Elokim, and the first part would be called Ner Mitzvah, and it would be to replace the Mishneh Torah, and the second part would be Or Hashem, which would be to criticize Moreh Nevuchim. But we don't have Ner Mitzvah, and Rav Yonasan asked me whether Hasdai Crescas wrote it and we just don't have it. And of course we can't answer that, because if we don't have it, we don't have it, but nobody cites it. So one can presume that for all intents and purposes he didn't write it. He may have written parts of it, but it was never circulated. But he had some very important Talmidim who could have cited it had it been written. Rav Yosef Albo, Rav Zerachia Halevi, the Zerachia Halevi who wrote the Drashot, not the more famous Zerachia Halevi, so he he probably never got around to writing it. In the Drashot HaPesach, he has a Drashat HaPesach, he has a drasha on the laws of Pesach. And there you see his approach to halacha. And you also see it in certain places in Or Hashem. There was a chacham in the end of the 19th century, or late 19th, early 20th century, Yirmiyahu Flensburg, who wrote a perush on the certain parts of Or Hashem, in which he tries to develop halachic hints in. So it's those who are interested, you can get it. I think you can maybe even find it online on Hebrew books. The perush of Yirmiyahu Flensburg to Sefer Or Hashem. Okay, let's look at the beginning of the criticism he has of Mishneh Torah. He says, "Hachibur hakolel." Right, the Mishneh Torah is a chibur kolel, and that's something that's very characteristic of the Mishneh Torah. That the Mishneh Torah includes everything, as opposed to most other works like the Rif and most other attempts to set down codes of halacha. The Rambam includes all the laws of the Beit HaMikdash and the Korbanot, all the laws which are not obtaining bisman hazeh, laws that are practical, laws are not practical. He includes everything. It's really hakolel. His notion of halacha is completely all-embracing. He includes everything. So when he says Sefer HaChibur HaKolel, he means the Rambam is really including everything. Chibur HaKolel El Harav Rabbeinu Moshe ben Maimon, Kara'o Mishneh Torah. And here, I put in the note of what the Rambam says when he calls his book Mishneh Torah. There was a lot of criticism. In fact, Ad Hayom Hazeh, most people don't call, the yeshivas, right? Most people don't call Mishneh Torah, because there was a lot of criticism of the title, that who does he think he is to write Mishneh Torah, right? And so usually it's a Yad HaChazakah or some another name of the Rambam, but Rambam called it Mishneh Torah, and he explains why he calls it Mishneh Torah, and he says, "Kedei shelo yehei adam tzarich lechibur acher ba'olam bedin midinei Yisrael, ela yehei chibur ze mikabetz LeTorah Sheba'al Peh Kula." Mishneh Torah has the entire Torah Sheba'al Peh. Lefichach karati shem chibur ze Mishneh Torah, lefi she'adam korei b'Torah shebichtav tchila, ve'achar kach korei b'zeh, v'yodea mimenu Torah Sheba'al Peh Kula, ve'eino tzarich likrot sefer acher b'neihem. There's a famous mistake that's based on this, that people think that the Rambam wanted to throw away the Gemara, right? But that's not what he's saying here. He's saying something very radical, but not that. What he's saying is Rambam distinguishes between three completely different things. Torah shebichtav, which for him means Tanakh. The Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim, he calls Torah shebichtav. In Hilchot Talmud Torah. Torah Sheba'al Peh is the halacha psuka, halacha asur v'hamutar, and Gemara is lahotzi davar mitoch davar. So we call the Bavli and the Yerushalmi Talmud because it's not halacha psuka, but it's logic about shakla v'taria on the halacha. So Gemara is the shakla v'taria, and the Mishnah is a code of Torah Sheba'al Peh. And as a code, the code has to be something that you can open up and find out the asur and the mutar. And so Rambam says after 1,000 years, the Mishnah was set down by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi in approximately the year 200. The Rambam is writing about a little less than 1,000 years later. And the Rambam says, since the Mishnah, we've had the Yerushalmi and the Bavli and the Tosefta, and we've had the Sifra and the Sifrei, and we've had all the Sifrut, the Gaonim, and there's a lot of new halachot have been determined. So the Mishnah is no longer functioning as a code. As a code of the Asur v'Mutar. You can't open up the Mishnah and find out what the halacha is, because 1,000 years of halacha have gone by. And therefore, when he writes the Mishneh Torah, he does want to replace the Mishnah, which is a very bold thing. He wants to replace the Mishnah. But he doesn't want to replace the Gemara, because what he's doing has nothing to do with the Gemara. The Gemara is study for Shakla V'Tarya. And so he's definitely in favor of studying Shakla V'Tarya, but he believes that you have to have a code which sets down what the basic law is. Now Rav Hasdai Crescas goes on. Kro Mishneh Torah below machlokot ki'im b'makomot ma'atim. Right. So Rambam in the Mishneh Torah, he wants to give you exactly what you have to do. And he determines the halacha all the time. The Rambam decides what the halacha is, and if there's a machloket, he usually doesn't tell you what the machloket is. He gives you what his final word is. V'kalal bo masha nimtza b'talmud b'tesefta v'sifra v'sifrei b'inyan mitzvot. Ve'im heyot harav ha'mechaber hazeh hifli la'asot b'svarav ha'mevuarim. Right, you can see that Hasdai Crescas has great admiration, right? Admiration for the Rambam, who hifli la'asot. And the Rambam it's one thing that's true about the Rambam, whatever one thinks of the Rambam, his works are so clear. Read the Rambam, everything is really, he writes in such a powerful, clear way. Hine b'chibur hamitzvot, namely b'mishneh Torah, l'masha hishmit machlokot ha'gaonim u'shmoteihem. Right, he gives you the halacha, but he doesn't tell you which gaon he's agreeing with and which gaon he's not agreeing with. Gam lo hayir al mekomot shorshei devarim, and he doesn't cite the sources where the dispute appears in the Gemara or in some other text. Hine lo nitzalnu me'mevucha v'hasafek. Right, he uses the word mevucha, which is Rambam's word, more than mevuchim. Right? You get a lot of perplexity, he says, when you read the Mishneh Torah. Kishenimtza b'sifrei zulato me'mechabrim hagedolim hefech haskamato v'deotav. What do we do when we find that some other authority has a different view from the Rambam? How do we know whether to agree with him or to agree with the Rambam or not? And this is the same criticism that we find in the Raavad, in which I have mentioned over here. In I think I quoted in note number 3. In the Hasaga of the Raavad.
Basically, it's a very big criticism of the Rambam, basically saying that I'm not, even though I have a lot of admiration for you, but I don't accept you as an authority that, like Rabbi Anasi, that could write the code. That's basically what he's saying, that he is saying, yeah?
That's the best way to put it. That's exactly it.
I have a lot of admiration for you, but you're not Rabbi Anasi.
Exactly. That's exactly what he's saying. That's exactly what the Raavad is saying. Okay. But I think you just said it a little clearer than what, right? And the Rambam's great hero was Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. He's always praising Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and he's trying to write, and he uses even his Hebrew.
Make a break.
A break?
Yeah, people to ask a few questions.
Oh, questions? Yeah. Well, let me just finish this. We'll finish the thing about the Mishneh Torah. Of course, the Hebrew in the Mishneh Torah, of course, follows the Hebrew of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. That's the style that the Rambam uses. But here we quote the Raavad, who says, Amar Avraham, Savar letakein velo tikein, ki hu azav derech kol hamechabrim, asher hayu lefanav, ki hem heviu raya ledivreihem, v'chatvu dvarim b'shem omram. right? כותבים דברים בשם אומרם, מביאים גאולה לעולם. The Rambam didn't write, he doesn't write דברים בשם אומרם. ועתה לא אדע למה אחזור מקבלתי ורעייתי בשביל חיבורו של זה המחבר. He doesn't call him החכם הזה, זה המחבר. The Ravid says, not only is the Rambam not greater than, Ravid's probably thinking, he doesn't say it exactly, but he's probably thinking, not only is the Rambam not greater than you, than Nasi, who says he's greater than I am, Ravid is thinking, you know, and if I have my arguments, I think the halacha is Aleph, the Rambam says it's Bet, why should I change my mind? Because of the Rambam. Oh, Rambam, well, give your proofs, give your proofs, who are you, what Gemara are you basing yourself on? You know, what? And if you're not giving your proofs, if you're not saying what Gaon you're basing yourself on, well, why? Ravid says, why should I change my mind? And this is Hasdai Crescas is used giving the same argument. And then he says, Ein ze ele kol kovel di ruach yatira be. This is an interesting expression, which maybe I'm asking what it means, because it appears in Sefer Daniel in a positive way. About Daniel, it's mentioned there in Daniel that Daniel is greater than the Achashtar Panim and the leaders and the presidents and the senators of all the people in Bavel. He's greater because he has Ruach Yatira Bey. And Ruach Yatira Bey means, Mefarshim say it's either Ruach Chochmah or Ruach Nevuah or something good. He was better than all the other, he was superior to all the other people in the court because of his great knowledge or great spiritual ability. And here the Ravid is using it in a negative sense, or maybe it's sort of half positive, half negative, as if the Rambam thinks he's a Navi. Right? The Rambam thinks he has Ruach Yatira. He's writing, Rambam is writing not like a normal human being. He's writing like someone who has, and now, before we take this break for the question, I just want to say so far everything Hasdai Crescas says, he's following the Ravid, but then he goes on, and he has an original critique of Moreh Nevuchim, which is very typical of the way Hasdai Crescas thinks. Umilvad ze lo heir al sibot dvarim v'klaleihem. He doesn't give the general principles klaleihem, b'shleimut, the general principles, the klalim. He doesn't give the klalim. Ki im zikaron pratim. It's the way of the Rambam in the Mishnah Torah is not to give general rules, but to cite the examples. Pratim shabau b'divrei akadmoneni, the examples that happen to appear in the Gemara or in the Gaonim. Uliyot hachelek hagadol me'amitzvot michomer ha'efshar. Right? The mitzvot are things that are changing all the time. New situations come up, and the mitzvot take on new the piskei halacha change as things change. V'hu rachav mineyam. V'hapratim lo takif behem yediya liyotam bilti ba'alei tachlit. The mitzvot are infinite. The mitzvot are dealing with an infinite amount of situations in the world, and therefore they're infinite. And you can't just give examples, because every time Hadayan has to make a decision, it's a new case, and the question is, what's the application of the mitzvah in this case? And Rav Hasdai Crescas says you have to give klalim. Once you have the klalim, then you can apply the klalim to different cases. But if you just have pratim, you don't know. And his point is that the pratim are finite, but the klalim cover the infinite. And as we see that a topic that very much preoccupied Rav Hasdai Crescas is the question of infinity. What is the infinite? And so here he's bringing the infinite, the halacha is infinite. The halacha is infinite. It deals with an infinite amount of things. New cases are coming up tomorrow. I mean, everyone always says in Israel that you can't have a medinat halacha. You can't have a state of the halacha. Why? Because, well, for all these years there hasn't been, and therefore the halacha hasn't developed in the areas of economics. And other people say, no, adraba. In hachinami, that's the whole good thing. You have to soak the halachot. It's a challenge to the halacha. Okay, then he's saying that the halacha, that if you're going to write a code, the code has to take into consideration the infinity of the mitzvot. And then after saying that, he says, "V'hatema hagadol v'hapliya ha'atzuma ech ala al rucho." And when he says ech ala al rucho, I think he's thinking of that pasuk in Daniel, ruach yatira be, ech ala al rucho, ech ala al rucho ve'ech dima sheyunchu kol sifrei zulato mehakodmim v'tehei klal haTorah sheba'al peh misura lechiburo. Ad shekara'o mishne Torah. Okay, now we can have a question.
First of all, I just want to clarify the second point.
Yes.
That's there. Just to make sure. The Rambam is the first person that really made a phenomenal job at the codification. Not the first, but I'm saying real codification of Yahadut.
Right.
And
Rambam would say he was the second.
Right. I'm saying, being that the Rambam is a big philosopher, and he has his philosophy under every din, every this. But if I understand good, the criticism from Crescas is the second criticism is that even though the Rambam has its very nice in chapters, in prakim, in halachot, that everything is following a koteret, how he starts. But at the end of the day is the Rambam was very tzamud to the lashon hagmar, not the lashon exactly, but to the
cases.
At the end of the day, the Rambam is more case law than really law, than really saying klalim and more philosophical klalim. And it's a very interesting thing, because even though the Rambam's etzem sidur hadvarim is a very philosophical type of order, because he made himself the order, but still he didn't want to deviate from the lashon hagmara and the mishnah, not the lashon, but the cases from the mishnah. How do you explain this part? Because it's like he does deviate from the Gemara. He makes his own seder, own chalakim, own prakim, own halachot, but still he doesn't want to deviate totally from the Gemara and really trying to be more like case law, and this is really what Crescas is criticizing him. Because if you're making a chibur that be shlemut, it needs to be more. Don't talk about specific case. Give us the shurashim and the pratim, right?
But it's the opposite. This is the answer to his tama.
No, it's intentional. He didn't want to leave
For sure
it in the
intentional.
hands of anybody.
That's what I'm asking.
He didn't want to leave it in the hands of people.
That's what I'm asking the professor. Why do you
What
think
he really didn't want to leave in the hands?
I don't think he wanted the people who read Mishnah Torah to be able to paskin based upon klalim. He gave you a kitzah, basically.
I see that.
But it's it's impossible because always going to be new cases, and you're going to have to.
So you're going to have to go to the rabbi who learned.
Right. I was going to say something very similar to this. I don't know if I can answer.
The Rambam always likes to leave you hanging. All of it.
That's true. The Rambam. It's true. That's connected with why he so much loves mevucha. He loves the perplexity. He loves perplexity. But I think that I was going to say something similar, that the Rambam wants the Dayan to take care of these problems, and you see it when you look in his own tshuvot. He's always looking for klalim to apply, and I think he doesn't think that that's the job of the code. The code tells you what the halacha psuka is. New cases come up. The Dayan has to come along and figure out how to apply.
Case law, more like
I think it's
more like case law.
More like case law.
More like the British law, like the not like the continental law, more like the common law.
Right, I think so. Yeah, this you have to ask Yara Loverby when he even.
I think Rav Eliezer Melamed does that in his Purim, that before Echad Shabbat, he explains the intention of Shabbat, and then uses the Purim to explain his philosophy, what Shabbat is, and according to that, he decides what's Matar and what's Asur. My question is, like, do you imagine that Rav Hasdai Crescas, based on that criticism, had he written a code of law, he would have given us the philosophical meaning on all the mitzvot, and based on that, written the pratim. Like, is this what would have been the antithesis
The answer.
to the Mishnah Torah?
I don't know if he's doing the same kind of thing that Rabbi Eliezer Melamed is doing, but what he clearly wants to do is give you klalim that you can paskin the halacha according to the klalim. And I think what you say is correct, that the Rambam is not writing this for Dayanim. I mean, he's writing it for everybody. This is an important thing to say about the Mishnah Torah. Some people think that he writes the Mishnah Torah for Amcha. Mishnah Torah is for everybody. It's for the...
Rambam la'am.
Yeah.
we're saying everybody.
No, but I'm saying for
Not
everybody.
only for the
Hakol.
Also for the
Hagadol v'hakatan. It's written not only. It's written for the Rabbanim Gedolim, and it's also written for the Anashim Pshutim. Mishnah Torah is for everybody, but since it's for everybody, not everybody can take the klalim and turn them into halachot. The only ones who can do that are the dayanim, who understand the whole, have a deep knowledge of what's going on in the Talmud. So the dayanim can do it, and therefore that's the kind of thing I think the Rambam would say you don't. It doesn't have to. It shouldn't be inside the. It shouldn't be inside the code. The code is someone wants to find out what the halacha is, the halacha psuka. Okay, you look at it. Now, if a difficult case comes up tomorrow, the dayanim with the background and the chachamim gedolim sit down and they try to apply it. And I think that's probably what he would answer to Rav Hasdai Crescas, that, and because I think if you look at Rambam's, actually I wrote an article about this in a called Klaliyut HaChok, and it's on More on the Vuchim Gimel Amad Daled, but maybe if I can say fast what my paradigm example is, to which is what the Rambam is doing, although we should be talking about Hasdai Crescas, not the Rambam, but there's a case that the Rambam has of a husband and wife in Alexandria. And you have this fellow in Alexandria who marries one of the very wealthy, a daughter of the very wealthy family in Alexandria. And they have a child or two children. And then it turns out that he's a troublesome fellow, this guy. And he gets into a fight with her family. And he wants to divorce her, and he comes to the courts and he says, I want to divorce her, and they say, well, you have to pay the ksuba. And then apparently one of the dayanim in the court says to him, and in the Beis Din says to him, wait a minute, we have a halacha that kol hamalim, if you say that you want to go to Eretz Yisrael, and she says, well, I can't go to Eretz Yisrael, my whole family is here, we've been generations in Alexandria, I can't leave my family. Then she goes out without a ksuba. So he comes to the Beis Din and he says, I want to go to Eretz Yisrael, and she says that she doesn't want to go to Eretz Yisrael, she wants to stay here in Alexandria with her family. And they paskin that she divorces her without the ksuba. Well, she comes from this rich, wealthy, well-to-do, influential family who is supporting the Beis Din, supporting all the Batei Knesset, supporting the Dayanim, supporting the whole community. And they didn't like this psak. So they apparently said, we're going to stop supporting, stop supporting. So the Dayanim, in panic, they write to the Rambam in Cairo, and they say, what should we do? And they say to him, maybe we should say that it's not our minhag to paskin like the Mishnah says. And the Rambam answers back, and he says, you can't say that. It's a Mishnah Meforeshet. You can't say that we're not recognizing a Mishnah Meforeshet. It's a Mishnah Meforeshet. And hakol ma'alim ve'ein hakol yoredim. Ein hakol moridim. It's a Mishnah Meforeshet. You can't. That's what the halacha is. The halacha is that if the wife refuses to move to Eretz Yisrael, then the husband can divorce her without a ksuba. And if the husband refuses to go to Eretz Yisrael, then he's forced to give her the ksuba. That's the halacha every place, and you can't say that there's different halacha. That's what the halacha is. Every place, he says, where there's no meriva b'mishpacha. There's no meriva b'mishpacha. So the Rambam is bringing in here a klal. He's bringing in here a klal. That the klal is that if there's no, but that's a klal that only a great dayan like the Rambam can say that there's a klal here. You don't want everybody who's reading the code to start making his or her own klalim. You want someone who's thought these whole things through and knows the whole background of what's in the Gemara and what's in the Piskei Halacha and the Geonim. And so the Rambam does bring in a klal. He says, when there's a meriva, this doesn't apply. And then he says to the Dayanim in Alexandria, and if you don't understand this psak, then you don't understand the pasuk tzedek tzedek tirdof. Right. So that's the Rambam. So the Rambam does believe in klalim, but I think you're right. That's exactly the point. That it's not a code is not the place for the klalim.
A little different type of klal. We were talking more like a klal that shouldn't quote case law, just give you the general philosophy under this, then.
Like Urach Hashil.
Yeah, but you're talking more like separate type of klalim, not the philosophy of the Pacific halacha, philosophy even moto halacha, even
right.
Things, I'm saying the example you're giving is not so much a philosophy in a certain halacha, it's more klalim even before the halacha, even klalim to dayan, that in cases that he needs to deviate from the halacha.
Right.
Ḥasdai is not talking for this kind of klalim, if I understand good. Ḥasdai is more talking about klalim. Don't give me case law. Give me the idea of Shabbat. Give me the shirashim. Give me. I'm asking. I'm just asking.
No, I think you're right, but I think the Rambam doesn't see it that way. I think the Rambam thinks it's sufficient. It's sufficient. I mean, what is?
Understood. But just saying the example that he gave is a little different than the klalim what Ḥasdai wants to see.
Right, but I think as far as the Rambam is concerned, that's how you deal with the.
With case law.
Right. That's no. But why is it similar? Because that's how you deal with the infinite. You have a new case that comes up, that's not exactly like a case that's there, and then you look for a klal that can take care of it. So I think that the Rambam is not saying that, okay, this prat hasn't come up before, and what can we do? Okay. No, he's saying he's bringing in a klal that enables him to deal with the situation. Okay, I think we should. Yeah. Okay.
Touched upon it. I think there's like three. I think is he maybe just referring to the very basic klal? The very basic is just like almost like all of the klal, mishnah, stilas, just like a Shmuel Nugget did or something. When Crescas is criticizing the Rambam, we're not thinking about something as lofty as these textual discrepancies or reasons that are discrepancies, but just the very basic. Give us rules. What do we do if we find a mishnah that is a stira with another mishnah? What do we find if we do a stira in the Rambam? How do we deal with it?
Right.
Is it maybe just even more basic?
No, I don't. I think they're two different things. The criticism of the Raivad, that's exactly the criticism of the Raivad. The criticism of the Raivad is that since the Rambam's not citing his sources, he's not telling you what Gemara he's basing himself on, he's not telling you what Gaonim he's basing himself on. Since that's the case, if I think that the halacha is Aleph and the Rambam paskins bet, why should I accept the Rambam's? Why should I accept? That's what the Raivad is saying. Why should I accept? I don't consider the Rambam greater than me. The Raivad is saying, I think the halacha is like this, and he's paskining different. Now, if he's going to give me his sources, and if he's going to give me his argument, then I may change my mind. You know, if he says that, I'm following this Gaon who said X, Y, and Z, okay, that's one thing. But the Rambam doesn't. The Rambam just gives you the bottom line. And so that's the argument of the Raivad. Rav Hasdai Crescas brings in an additional argument that laws, as you say, it's a difference between case law and common law, right? That laws have to be phrased in terms of universal propositions, in order to meet the infinity of new cases that are always coming along. And what I tried to show in this example, which may or may not be close to the kind of thing, is that the Rambam thinks that that's the job of the Dayan. The job of the Dayan to come in is to bring in some klalim which enable him to deal with difficult cases.
After you said that, so Crescas, what is Crescas being cholek on this? He feels that it's not only for the Dayan, it's also for everyone?
But this is an interesting thing that we're just raising the question now. It looks like that one could say that the answer that the Rambam would give to Rav Hasdai Crescas is, it's very nice to have klalim if you can do it. That would be a very nice chibur if you do something like that, but it's not a code. It would be maybe a good sefer iyun if you want to present a sefer like that. It's not a code because the idea of a code is to make things easy for anybody who wants to know what to do. The moment you have,
As opposed to Uruch HaShulchan. That would be very. Shulchan is good for everyone.
Much easier. You can see the halacha ala ma'aseh.
Exactly.
It gives you a structure and some kind of.
Okay, we're going to next.
Right.
The Rambam himself has said it's to get from Mishnah Torah. That's enough. If he gives you those white.
Right. By the way, in terms of the Shulchan Aruch, I also bring a quotation here from Rav Yosef Karo, in which he writes in the Beit Yosef, and it's also true for the Shulchan Aruch. Why did I write the Shulchan Aruch? Why did I write the Shulchan Aruch like the Tur? Why didn't I write it like the Mishnah Torah? And I cited here in the note there that he says, I started to write the Beis Yosef, and I think we don't know when he wrote he published the Kesef Mishnah last, but I think he started writing it maybe even first. But in the Beis Yosef, he says there he says that he originally wanted to write the Beis Yosef, and later this thing said about the Shulchan Aruch. He wanted to write it according to the style of the Mishneh Torah, not according to the style of the Tur. But there's a problem with the Mishneh Torah, that the Mishneh Torah only gives you one view. It only gives you, Rambam gives you only his own svara, and he doesn't give you rova deot. And therefore, he said, I had to do it like the Tur, because even though he says the Rambam is the most mefursam, and he clearly loves the Rambam, he says, but no, he couldn't do it like the Rambam, because the Rambam, exactly the criticism of the Ravid. The Rambam just gives you one view, and Rav Yosef Karo says, no, I wanted to, even though he himself is writing a code and he's giving one view, but still he wants to take into consideration all that, which he does in Beis Yosef. So that's, every position has its positive and its negative. But I think what Rambam would say in response to Rav Hasdai Crescas is that's a very interesting project to make. To have these general laws for the halachot, and go ahead and write a sefer like that. But it won't be good for a code, because when you write a code, you want to have very simply what we were talking about building laws the other day, and a very complicated pratim about the laws of taxes and building laws and what people are. Supposedly, you just had general laws. You just had universal type things. People would go crazy. Right? People want to obey the law. They want to know what you want to obey the law. You want to know what the halacha is, what the law is, so you can observe it. And that's what a code comes to tell you what you have to do.
Hasdai Crescas didn't get the whole idea of a code. He didn't understand that concept. I mean, was it a new thing?
They have different definitions. That's what we said. There's case
It's not
law.
a definition.
There's
not
case law.
I
and there's
understand, but everybody understands the importance today of a code. He didn't get that idea.
He had a different. Let's say he had a different
just
idea.
A continental law and a common law. There's two types of views
Yeah,
of how to look
yeah.
law. No.
Right,
If
so-
these two views represent if the law is made for the masses, if it's made for the dayanim himself. And the same thing, I think about the Rambam's thing that doesn't bring shitot, it doesn't bring a makorot, is also because he wants it to be a code.
Right.
It doesn't
Absolutely.
want to confuse people. It's a part of the same
Right.
thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's Rambam, and so it's right. That's exactly what's going on. That, but the Rambam believes that a code has to be very, very, very clear and not to confuse people, and everybody knows what. As far as the Rambam doesn't want to stop the Chachamim from going into it deeper, but he wants to have the basic law known to everybody. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on source number 2. וכשנחלשו הדורות ורפו ידי המחזיקים בתורה שבעל פה המקובלת. Right, that's Torah שבעל פה המקובלת. That's the law that everybody has to know. The open law, the galui, the law that, and uvematzpunei stareha v'sodoteha. So there are two things that both the Torah Sheba'al Peh Mekubelet and the sodot of Torah Sheba'al Peh. There are two different areas. Avda chochmat chachamenu uvinat nevonenu nistara v'rabim mibnei amenu hitnasu. Okay, so we forgot when in the as the galut, and he doesn't actually mention galut with the Rambam. It's very interesting that Rambam emphasizes all the time that the basis of Rambam always says the basis of the problems are galut, and the basis of the problems are and not so much even right, exactly. That the Rambam all the time is saying that the problem is that that we're thrown out of Eretz Yisrael in galut, exile, and here he just says שנכלשו הדורות ורפו ידי המחזיקים בתורה שבעל פה המקובלת ובמצפוני סתריה וסודותיה אבדה חוכמת חכמינו ובינת נבוננו נסתרה ורבים מבני עמנו התנסו להעמיד חזון דברי נבואות. They took the חזון of the נביאים ודברי הנבואות Stumim v'chatumim, and these were these secrets.
What do you mean, mechash v'kitzin?
Including them, but I think in general, all the sodot of the and interpreted them. He's talking about the chalomot uvehavalim, uveyaldei nochrim. He's saying that all the secrets of the Torah were interpreted according to yaldei nochrim. That's what he means when he's thinking about Yaldei Nochrim, means philosophy. That he's talking about the philosophers, and of course first and foremost the Rambam, but not only the Rambam, first and foremost the Rambam, who interpreted the sodot of the halakha, the sodot of the Torah Sheba'al Peh in accordance with the Yaldei Nochrim. Now, if we look at Yaldei Nochrim, it's an interesting term here. It's because from Yeshayahu, Yaldei Nochrim Yaspiku, from Yeshayahu Perek Bet. But I have a couple of things here quoted in note number 5.
First, Professor, if you please explain just the definition for the people. What's the definition of the words Yaldei Nochrim Yaspiku? Pashut Pshat.
That they entertain themselves with the children of the foreigners. Maybe it means they foreign women.
What's Yaspiku?
Yaspiku, I think there are different perushim to Yaspiku. I think one is that they delighted themselves in the Yaldei Yaspiku. They delighted themselves in Yaldei, or they got sipuk out of They got sipuk out of Yaldei Nochrim. I think you see what some of the Mefarshim say. I think they got sipuk out of Yaldei Nochrim, and. So the text here is the Rav Hasdai Crescas writes, Beit Yaakov lechu v'ne'elcha b'or Hashem. ki
Histapku.
Histapku. I'm not sure that's the pshat either. Ki ata Hashem natashta amcha beit Yaakov uveyaldei nochrim yaspiku. And the Rambam uses this expression, Yalbei Nochrim. What's interesting here, the Rambam uses it in exactly the opposite way, or to put it chronologically, Hasdai Crescas uses it in the opposite way of the Rambam. Because look what the Rambam writes. Rambam writes in More Nevuchim, Chelik Bet Perek Yud Aleph, in the Tirgum of Shmuel ibn Tibon. Ve'elu hadvarim, the dvarim of philosophim. All the Rambam speaks about all the philosophers. Kulam kvar beyarnu she'einam sotrim davar mima shezachrun nivienu v'chachmei toratenu. All the things that the philosophers talked about of course, when they were saying correct things, all the things that the philosophers spoke about, it doesn't contradict the Torah. The opposite is the case. The Torah is in favor of wisdom. Ki umatenu uma chachama shlema. We're a uma chachama shlema, and therefore anything that happens in science, and then it's part of our ummah. We're also interested in. This is also part of Torah. Ach kasher ibdu tovotenu, when the wicked people came along and destroyed all our good situation. Risha'ei ha'umot haschalot, and he uses all the time this word in Arabic, jahiliyyah. The Jahiliyyah in Islam are referred to the Tipshim who were ruling before Muhammad came along. So it's a big word. It's a word that's used a lot in Islamic culture. That basically the Tipshim, the ignorant people who were there before before Islam, and the Rambam uses it a lot. And then the Rambam uses it, these Jahiliyyah who are ruling us. Ve'ibdu chochmotenu v'chiburenu. All the writings that we had from the days of the Tanakh, all those writings have been lost. The ignorant nations who ruled over us destroyed all our scientific, all the philosophers. So we had all these philosophers. We had our own philosophers. But the literature, when we were living among the ignorant people, it was destroyed. V'heimitu chachamenu, they killed our chachamim, ad sheshavnu schalim, and we ourselves became jahiliyyah. Ve'amar Yeshayahu, ve'avda chochmat chachamav uvinat nivonav tistatar. Kach, as you can see what Rav Ḥasdai Crescas is doing with the Rambam's thing, he's just turning the whole thing upside down. Kach amar behete kadeyot aschalim elenu uveyaldei nochrim yaspiku. What does yaldei nochrim refer to according to the Rambam? It's the ideas of the Jahiliyyah, not the anti-philosophical ideas of the Jahiliyyah, the superstitious, vulgar ideas of the Jahiliyyah, as opposed, which moved us away from philosophy and science. V'kasher gadalnu al minhag deot haschalim, and we were living among these Jahiliyyah, and we accepted the ideas of these Jahiliyyah. Shavu elu ha'inyanim ha'filosofim. All of a sudden, we looked at the ideas of the philosophers, and they seemed to be strange to us. Ki'ilu heim nochrim mitoratenu, ve'ein ha'inyan kein. So the Rambam is saying, what's Yaldei Nochrim Haspiku? Yaldei Nochrim Haspiku is the Jahiliyyah. It's the ignorant, the ideas of the ignorant nations, which pushed us away from philosophy. Hasdai Crescas is saying it's exactly the opposite. The Yaldei Nochrim, it's not the ideas of the Jahiliyyah who pushed us away from it. The Yaldei Nochrim is the philosophers.
What's the English word for Jahiliyyah? Masses?
So it comes, the word means ignorant. It means the ignorant, the ignorant.
That's a fact of.
Majhul.
It's like Rambam is actually responding to Crescas here. He's explicitly saying, do not
Right.
Interpret this verse as
Right. Hasdai Crescas is responding to Eris, is a Rambam.
Right,
actually.
of
Yeah.
course, but it's like
You see this idea in Avram ben Rambam. Every
Yeah.
good idea that was out there, he said it's originally a Jewish idea.
Right.
It's religious Jews, they took it from us.
Right. Well, it says it particularly about the Sufim. That the Sufim, yeah. But I tell you,
Agadot Chazal?
no, I think he's talking about the Sodot.
So the what Sodot?
And also in Agadot, but in general there are Sodot, there are all kinds of Sodot and Maseh Merkava, Maseh Bereshit, Maseh Merkava, Sodot. The Rambam says Maseh Bereshit and Maseh Merkava is physics and metaphysics.
Right, but
So that's an example. That's an example of interpreting Sodot according to Yaldei Nochrim.
so the Rambam doesn't have proof that these ideas were with us in generations gone by. He believes so.
He says it has proof because it's written. "Ki chokhmaskem v'naskem ein kalam." It's really. He said if science and philosophy is a stira to the Torah, then he doesn't understand the pasuk.
But maybe science and philosophy was not Chokhmah when the Torah was
It's obvious that
given.
That's what he
ideas
says.
and we lost
What
them.
the Rambam says. No?
We lost them, yeah.
It does not. It's not basically no history at all.
No, of course not.
This is a very interesting question, but I don't know if we should go into it. But I think if you look at, there are lots of things that you can see. You can see from different psukim that in the days of the Tanakh, no, but that they were dealing with science. They have all engineering. They had a lot of engineering in the things that they were building with the amot, the aqueducts and things. And with you can see in astronomy, they were very advanced in astronomy, and they had I think the Rambam is looking at it and saying, if you look at the civilization of what was going on in Eretz Israel, you can see that it's true that they were chachamim, and they must have had also books about these other things. Clearly, they had books about astronomy and how to build these water aqueducts and the buildings, the big buildings. The Beit HaMikdash is a the building. So agriculture, absolutely, laws of agriculture. Right. Okay. Ad shemigdolei chachamenu nimshachu ledivreihem. So you had this people were interested in the Yaldei Nochrim. Ad shemigdolei chachamenu, the greatest of our scholars, migdolei chachamenu nimshachu ledivreihem v'nityapu b'ma'amareihem v'nitkashtu b'rayotehem. Right. And uveinehem uverosham. This nityapu yofi. This is of course in Chazal say Yaft Elohim Yefet, that the Yefefuto shel Yefet be'ohalei Shem. Yaft Elohim Yefet, that the yofi of Yefet, the beauty of Yefet, shall be of Yavan. Right. Yefet is Yavan. Yavan is the grandson of the son. There's Canaan, Yefet, and Yavan. But basically, but Yaft Elohim Yefet is that the Yofi of Yavan, the Yofi of Greece, shall be in the Ohalei Shem. But what is it? It's the Yofi. What Hasdai Crescas is saying. Philosophy is, and this is series following Yehuda Halevi, that the philosophy Chokhmat Yavanit has what Yehuda Halevi calls Chokhmat Yavanit. In the Gemara, Chokhmat Yavanit is not philosophy, but for Yehuda Halevi, Chokhmat Yavanit is philosophy. That philosophy has prachim velo pri. Right? It has, and I can quote from his poem, that it's beautiful, but it's not nourishing. It's not nourishing. And this idea that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi has about philosophy, yeah, it's beautiful, but it's not nourishing. This is, I think, what Hasdai Crescas is speaking about here, that, okay, the Rambam, philosophy in science, it adds beauty to our lives, but it's not true nourishment. ועד שמגדולי חכמינו נמשכו לדבריהם ונתייפו במאמריהם ונתקשטו בראיותיהם וביניהם ובראשם הרב הגדול. Right? Great kavod for the Rambam, but look what he's going to say about him. Rabbeinu Moshe bar Maimon Zal, asher im godel sichlo v'haflagat hakafato b'Talmud. Tremendous respect for the Rambam's sechel and his knowledge. v'rochav levavo, hevin b'sifrei hafilosofim uv'ma'amareihem, pituhu vayipat. Right. So here again we see a play on Yofi and Yefet. Right? Pituhu vayipat. They seduced him and Hellenized him. Right. Pituhu vayipat. Umihakdemotehem achaloshot asa amudim v'yesodot lesodot haTorah b'sefer asher kara'o moreh hanuvuchim. And so he refers here to the 25 or 26 hakdamot, propositions or premises that the Rambam sets down in Moreh Nevuchim that you must use in order to establish the existence, unity, and incorporeality of Hashem. And this is Hasdai Crescas rejects this, that all these, and this is what gets him on his campaign against Aristotle. When the Rambam says you have to learn these 26 premises, and because these are the basis of how you're going to prove and how you're going to fulfill the mitzvot of Anochi Hashem, v'lo yeh lecha Elohim acharim al panai, v'ahavat, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and Ahavat Hashem and Yirat Hashem. These 5 mitzvot of the Pardes, you fulfill them, the Rambam says, by these Aristotelian propositions that you have to prove them. This is really what is upsetting Rav Hasdai Crescas. And he's saying, and then he starts to look at those Aristotelian propositions, which the Rambam says they're all proved, and he's going to say that at least 14, Rav Hasdai Crescas is going to prove at least 14 out of those 25 or out of those 26 are false. And that leads him to this whole campaign, a significant campaign against Aristotle and a new view of the universe. But this is exactly what he what he is against this. But he's recognizing that there's a beauty in philosophy. Just like he's exactly like Yehuda Halevi, that philosophy has a beauty in it. It has its own place. But the mistake is when you think that it's nourishing. It's not the real nourishment. Right? The Torah is the real nourishment. The philosophy is external beauty. Yeah, it's prochim, exactly, prochim.
You brought here
I brought it there. What is it? Right. Al tashiyacha chokhmat yavanit she'en ba prachim en la pri ki im prachim. Right. And the pasuk al tashiyacha refers to the Chava and the Nachash with the pri, with the pri, right? With the
through the series of the Shirim, we'll get some understanding what is the proposition that what the Torah is and not philosophy. So this is what we came.
Right. Okay. So let's. Right.
We'll see what's the proposition.
Right. Im heyot kavanat. Now here's a very interesting point that he's going to say. He's saying a couple of things at the same time. This is very typical of Rav Hasdai Crescas, that he says a number of things going on at the same time, and that's I think I mentioned it when we were talking a couple of days ago, that if you compare the style of Rav Hasdai Crescas with the style of the Ralbag, if there's ever a word missing in the Ralbag, I mean these are the two great philosophers who came after the Rambam, the Ralbag and Rav Hasdai Crescas. But if there's ever a word missing in the text in the Ralbag, you can always figure out what it's going to be. With Hasdai Crescas, if there's a word missing, there's no way of knowing what it is, because he's always going to surprise you by what he's saying. So his sentences go this way and that way and come back right again. And he says, Ve'im heyot kavanat harav, Rambam, b'zerotzuya. The Rambam had very good kavanot, great intentions. Kamu hayom avadim hamit partzim. Now the Maimonideans, right, the disciples of the Rambam are the ones we're worried about. Kamu hayom. He calls them avadim mitpartzim, right? Kamu.
Interesting language, no?
Yes, interesting language. That they're enslaved to the Rambam. they're not thinking independently. That's a good.
Who is he referring to now?
I think he's a Caspi, Narboni, and
It's interesting. It's
well, can't be a Barbanel because he's before a Barbanel.
No, it's interesting what he's telling them, like, you're not the thinkers, you're the avadim.
The
I'm the
Avadim.
thinker.
Right. Exactly. B'diuk.
Half kilometer, because they're not independent.
No,
Avadim
not
mitpartzim.
independent. He said
They're not
I'm
a-
the independent person.
Right. That's exactly what he's saying. That they're not independent. They're avadim mitportzim, and they're not thinking independently. They're just v'hafchu leminut. This is a very serious thing, minut, because as we will talk about on the fifth shiur, this minut was connected with, it was in the massacres of 1391. Many Jews were forcibly converted to Christianity. So minut was very serious, and there were charges, and historians today debate these charges. To what extent, who is more to blame, the Kabbalists or the philosophers, or or both? Well, one thing I would say, I mean, I'm not a historian about this, and I haven't really checked it out, but as a rule, when the Kabbalists convert, they cause a lot of trouble, because they convert out of emunah. they really, they're with a lot of passion. If the philosophers convert, it's usually out of opportunism.
Like Avner?
Avner Burgos,
The
for example.
Kabbalists.
Yeah.
And the philosophers, when they...
A philosopher converts.
It's not interesting.
He's well. You have the philosophers who believe that the philosophers are opportunism. That the philosophers may believe that with one of the arguments in maybe we'll speak about it, but in the Ephodi, there was also a great commentator on Moreh Nevuchim. He was a young friend and Talmid of Hasdai Crescas. He wrote a Perush to Moreh Nevuchim. He wrote, of course, a very big book called Maaseh Ephod, which on Dikduk and the Hebrew language. But he also wrote two very strong, maybe the two most extreme radical books against Christianity written by Jews in the medieval time: Al Tehika Avotecha and Klimat HaGoyim. And the interesting thing about this was that he wrote these two books after he was forcibly converted in 1391. After he's converted and he's living officially as a Christian, he writes the two most fiercely anti-Christian books that we have, Al Tehika Avotecha and Klimat HaGoyim. And there he accuses some of these philosophers who converted, that they converted out of, they're just opportunists.
But I think philosophers who converted, they understood the message of Jesus like in a more honest way, even than the true Christians.
I don't think
to relate.
the
It was
Jews.
like a Novi.
I didn't find any Jews in the medieval time who had a favorable attitude to the message of Jesus. They all thought that he was just a regular, normal rabbi who was not an exceptional individual. That, I mean, it could be your view. I mean, he says there are some very nice statements that he makes, but on the other hand, they can all be found They can also all be found someplace in the Talmud.
No, the saying is that this is the history of the people. Could be today you viewing like that, but this is not how.
Right. No,
we didn't view like that. The Jews didn't view that. This is not the way that they view.
Right, and not only that, generally the views that the Jews held anyway was that Jesus more or less was a regular Jew observing the Torah, and Paul came along. But with Ephodi, he has this. It's very so. So recently, a book came out on Ephodi by Maud Kozadai, and she asked the question. And these two books that he wrote against Christianity, he says in the introduction that Hasdai Crescas asked him to write the books. So he was, and he calls Crescas, Tiferet Rabbanim, asked me to write these books, and so I'm writing, and he says, even though, of course, he could write it much better than me. And we have a book written by Hasdai Crescas against Christianity called Bitul Ikarei Notzrim. But he asked for Ephodi to write these two works. And people ask, how is it possible that a Fodi, this is really, I should really talk about this on the 1391, but how is it possible that a Fodi who had converted to Christianity is writing these fierce books against Christianity and nobody's killing him, right? How is it? And from what we know, he showed up in shul, he was he was making his money selling Hebrew books. You know, how is it possible? And this is connected with another puzzle about a Fodi.
Where does a Fodi live? In Seville or in...
He lived in Catalonia. He was born in Perpignan, and he was in Barcelona. And he was a younger contemporary of Hasdai Crescas. And it's connected with another problem that, Rambam was very much against astrology. But most of the Chachamim, even those who were followers of the Rambam, were astrologers, including, we mentioned Ralbag. Ralbag was a big astrologer. They were astrologers. Rambam's attack on astrology and his connection of astrology and Avodah Zarah, that's unusual.
But did they know the Rambam's attack? The Rambam only attacked us in the Tshuva.
Yeah,
Maybe they didn't know about this.
that's maybe they didn't know. That could be, but in any case, one person who did know was a Fodi. A Fodi was against Fodi was against astrology, but the unusual thing was that in 1391, right after the massacres, a Fodi gets an appointment in the royal court as the royal astrologer, and he gets the title of Familiar of the King, royal astrologer. And the author of the book on a Fodi says it's very interesting. He gets this very big position. He's a big minister. It's a big minister. And we can't find anything that he did in court. In Hasdai Crescas, we have evidence all the time that he's appearing in court, he's doing this, he's doing that. And with a Fodi, who was the minister of the head astrologer, nothing.
We're talking about the Jewish court or the
Aragon, the court of Aragon, the court of
Aragon.
Aragon, the king of Aragon. Rav Hasdai Crescas was very important had a very important position in the court of Aragon, and a Fodi. So, but I think the explanation is very simple, that Hasdai Crescas, who was very close to the king and queen, arranged to have a Fodi get this fictitious position as head astrologer, and once you have a note that you're a minister of the king, you can do anything you want to, because anybody who touches you is attacking the king. So I think that's what happened with, and I think that happened with many Jews who outwardly may have converted, but they still continued to go to shul, and they were part of the community. And anybody said anything to them, I'm a minister of the king. You can. Okay, so let's just get back to these other texts. Ve'im heyot kavanat harambam b'zeh rutzuya kamu hayom avadim mitpartzim v'hafchu leminut divrei Elohim chayim. So they turned what the Rambam said into minut. The Rambam's Torah is divrei Elokim, but he says the Maimonideans, the students of the Rambam, the disciples of the Rambam, turned the divrei Elokim into divrei minut. Metilim mum b'kodashim b'divrei harav yitnu dofi ki tachat yofi. The Rambam gave us yofi, and they turned it into dofi. Ve'im hashbea hishbia shelo legalot tzvunav u'mistorei rayonof. Rambam in Mor Nevuchim, he makes us swear not to reveal the secrets of the book. And Caspi writes there, don't worry, dear reader, ani yakabel kilalato, and you kachna birchati. But in any case, Rav Ḥasdai says the Rambam makes us swear not to reveal his secrets. course, halachically, it's a problem. How can you make somebody swear if he doesn't add al da'at? If he doesn't take it al da'at, that's al da'at. That's mo. He doesn't. V'hine lo samu la'al milato, and all these disciples of the Rambam, they didn't break his oath. The oath, because what they revealed was not his secrets. They revealed their own imaginations. They misunderstood him. So they didn't reveal his secrets. You can't get them for revealing his secrets because they didn't know and they didn't understand the secrets of Mor Nevuchim. All these Narboni and Kaspi, they didn't understand. Ve'im hashbe'ah hishbi'ah shelo legalot tzfunav u'mistorei rayonav hine lo samu la'al milato v'lo avru al shvuato aval hitu dvarav leminut hefech kavanato. What they thought were the secrets of the Rambam, it's the opposite of what the Rambam wanted to say. So you can't say they're revealing Rambam secrets. The opposite is the case. So this is maybe something, today you had Leo Strauss who was revealing the secrets of the Rambam.
Secrets of Navoni's version.
Well, so you could say against Leo Strauss that he didn't really reveal the secrets of the Rambam, because he didn't understand them. What he was revealing was the opposite of what the Rambam wanted to say. So in any case, it's a very typical Hasdai Crescas sentence. You can see the sentence is going different ways. He's saying, the Rambam did a very good job. He tried very good kavanot. Oh, but we didn't get to the end of it yet, because now he's going to say, and he's saying the Rambam had great kavanot, but his disciples had bad kavanot. And then he says, V'hasridim el devar Hashem charedim bira'otan, his disciples, mitarim hasheretz min Torah umarim panim lo nitzolu min avvucha ukvar tefakatam be'ala. Wait a minute, did I miss the part where, okay. ושורש הדבר, כי לא נמצא עד עתה חולק במופתי היווני. Right, the Aristotelian philosophers always refer to Aristotle as hafilosoph. Aristotle is the philosopher. Just like Rav Hasdai Crescas refers to the Rambam as harav. Harav is, Aristotle is hafilosoph. But Yehuda Halevi and the Ramban and the Ran, Rav Hasdai Crescas, prefer to call Aristotle hayivani. To let you know that there's a cultural thing going on here. He's hayavani. V'shorosh hadavar ki lo nimtza ad ata cholek b'moftei hayavani asher hechshich einei Yisrael bizmanenu zeh ki al ken ra'iti ani asher nifkachu einai me'at b'melacha hahi. I've studied philosophy, I've studied physics, I understand this me'at, nifkachu einai me'at b'melacha hahi, namely philosophia, science. Lahalot al sefer hashorashim va'pinot asher aleihem tisha'ein haTorah bichlala v'hakotavim asher aleihem tisov mibilti naso panim rak le'emet. Right here, and now he says, va'er im zeh shebe'ikar hadeyot hahem lo yachlok bahem harav chalila. Right, there are several times where he uses the word chalila when he wants to say that the Rambam didn't say aleph, chalila. And that sometimes means that he really did say aleph. But here he says, chalila.
So what does it mean here? It means that really the Rambam did cholek?
Right, because he's going to say it in the next sentence. He says, chalila, to think that the Rambam is going to have problematic ideas. Yeah, but Chalila, that the Rambam should be cholek on these basic ideas that we have. Ve'im ha'emek sheba'u b'sifro, Mor Nevuchim. Ve'im ha'emek sheba'u b'sifro dvarim matmihim, I efshar mibilti shena'ir alehem. I mean, Chalila, to say that the Rambam had problematic views, but if we see that he does, if we see that he does, כי ואם האמת שבאו בספרו דברים מתמיהים, אי אפשר מבלתי שנעיר עליהם. We're going to point them out. We're going to point them out. כי הוא, אם היו דברי רבנו ושיחת חולין שלו חביבים עלינו ואהובים אצלנו, הנה האמת אהוב יותר. This is what Aristotle said about Plato when he attacks Plato. He says, Plato, my teacher, I love him very much, but I love the truth more. Right? So this is what he's saying about the Rambam, the same thing. והנה האמת אהוב יותר. וכל שכן, now here's the punch, וכל שכן, אם אפשר להימשך מן המקומות ההם חילול השם. We saw already that he uses twice the word minut, that he, Hasdai Crescas, does believe that these philosophic ideas are leading people to convert into Christianity, and they're particularly dangerous.
Does it mean Dafka Christianity or minut as does it mean Christianity or means minut not?
Minut in Chazal is Christianity.
There's no other
I'm
option.
just asking. I'm asking the
I think, well, it's a good question. If
minut
but-
doesn't mean Christianity.
Okay,
That's what I'm asking. Does it
yeah.
mean minut as Christianity,
But-
or maybe it means
right.
minim? What the Rambam calls minim.
Right. Let me just read what he says in והשורש אצלנו במקום שיש חילול השם, אין חולקים כבוד לרב. The general thing that the historians say about this statement, is that it's so strong. במקום שיש חילול השם, אין חולקים כבוד לרב, and he
It means in
mentions
his
twice.
context.
And he mentions twice. Minut, and he said, and he says, "Libeshech min makomot elu chilul Hashem." And twice he says chilul Hashem. He's talking about minut and chilul Hashem. And in the historical context, he's writing this right after the massacres of 1391, where he's clearly devoting a lot of effort to the fight against Christianity.
But
He
do we have any
he
proof?
writes a book against
But do we have
Christianity.
any proof that the philosophy is this was that brought people to Christianity? Do we have any proof on that?
I think it's a question of statistics that we don't have. That certainly that were.
Like
We
Yosef
said
Yavis,
before-
Yosef
That's-
Yavis is right.
We
Same
said
thing.
before to the
He's
contrary.
like
we
Yosef
said-
Yavis is right.
Where Yosef Yavitz,
That's
right?
right,
So
yeah.
we don't know what percentage what
It's the
percentage
same
of the
type of
people.
argument of Yosef Yavis.
Right. Yosef Yavitz is a little
But
bit
we
later.
said before
Right.
the contrary. The philosophers were opportunists, and the Kabbalim were
That's
like
right.
religious people. So philosophy didn't convert anyone to
Right.
Christianity.
Right. I-
philosophy.
I no, but
If
excuse me, the
philosophers
what?
were
I said Aristotelian
opportunists and
philosophy was
Kabbalim
very
were
much
real
incorporated
Christians,
into
philosophy
early
didn't
Right, true, true.
convert anyone to Christianity. They gave them the key to be opportunists, maybe.
Right, but no, but what I think is, there were. This has been written about also by Netanyahu's father, Ben Zion Netanyahu, and the great historian Yitzchak Ber has written about it. So you have Hillel ben Sasson, who was the father of the president of the Hebrew University, or the Nagid of the Hebrew University, Hillel ben Sasson, and that's also the grandfather of Hillel ben Sasson, who was a Choker.
The Einikel was the Talmud of Be'er.
Right,
Because I said the Talmud.
right, that's what I think. Right. Right, exactly. Or the son of the Talmud of Be'er.
Son?
Yeah, no, couldn't be because he's same family. There's a number of
They argue a lot.
same family. But that Hillel ben Sasson, maybe it is the Anikel.
think the
Yeah,
Choker.
he probably the Choker. Yeah, it could, he rejected the view of
Huh?
what? Yonah ben Sasson is right, absolutely. It's Yonah ben Sasson is the one who.
It's one of the Nevi'im.
It's not Hillel ben Sasson. The one who wrote. The one who.
Choker is Hillel. Chaim ben
Right,
Levi.
right. But also Yonah ben Sasson was also a Choker, And he's the one who wrote against Ber and Netanyahu. And he said, we don't have evidence that that philosophy equals. But we do have a lot of statements, as you say, Rav Yosef Yavitz also said, Shlomo Alami. Okay, so we have, everybody knows who's heard drashot of Rabbanim today that every Rav attacks the opposite camp, and they said
just like when he says that Asher Hichshich Eine Yisrael, and you bring in the footnote that the Medrash
right.
the Yovan, but this is a little bit apologetic because Yovan, what Chazal say, Hichshich Eine Yisrael, are the same Yovan. They're against the philosophers. They kill the philosophers.
Okay.
So it's like a little bit apologetic to use this Yovan on the philosophers. No?
Right, but it was used a lot that way. That's,
I know, but they did it.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, right. Of course, that's true. But to get
What? I did. No, but the Yovan is not. This is not the Yovan. The Chazal say the Gezairis Yovan are b'chalnish the Gorse philosophers in Yovan. What?
Why not?
That's not the philosophers. It's the,
What are they referring to? What are they referring to?
There was the
Syria.
great
Syria.
Greek mythologists. I don't know. Like, who says it's philosophy?
Well, Syrian.
Well,
What?
yeah.
no, but what I do think, I think well, so we have examples. I mean, we have examples of that. Of course, we hear this text of Hasdai Crescas, and you mentioned Yosef Yavot, Shlomo Alami. A number of cases where the philosophers are blamed. Also in Ephodi, in Alti Kavatecha, he also blames the philosophers. So there clearly was a phenomenon like this. But
There
what?
was serious counterclaims to that. There was serious counter, and 1391 was the opposite. That's against, and I forgot the cipher you had from that Moroccan, not Manahal. His claim is in
That was, yeah.
1391
That was much earlier. Yeah.
No, but the claim was that in 1391 was definitely that the Haman Am that converted was mostly the simpleton, not the Kabbalah, but the simple people had a much higher percentage of conversion than the intellectuals.
But that's probably true all the time. No. Whenever there are mass, whenever there are mass conversion,
How many philosophers?
because
How many philosophers are to begin with?
Really, does it mean? Nicht Chochmas Yovan. Hashem Chazal means philosophers.
that's why Hasdai Crescas means it. That's the Yavan, right? Oh no, I don't think that's the pshat of the midrash. No, but that's.
Why is not the Chazal?
I think it has to do.
I want to know how you say it.
I think it has to do with the political, the political gezerot on.
Because not always even the politicians in Yovan were a one page with
Right.
philosophy.
Let's wrap up the show.
Yeah, that's
I think
right.
Q&A session.
Oh, so we didn't do the. Okay. Uliyot yesod ha'to'ut v'ha'mevucha. What's the foundation? What's the cause of all this trouble? Ha'hisha'en b'divrei ha'yevani. Aristotle is the big problem. Uvemoftim asher chashav. Ra'iti laha'ir al shikrut moftav v'ziyuf ta'anotav. Since Aristotle is the cause of all our troubles, I have taken it upon myself to criticize one by one all his false premises. Gam b'meshen ne'ezar mimenu harav, including where Maimonides agrees with him. Leman aso kayom laharot le'einei ha'amim ki ha'mesira ha'mevucha be'inyanei ha'emunah. There's only one thing that removes perplexity. It's not philosophy. V'ha'me'ira kol machshakim. He ha-Torah levad. It's only the Torah. The Torah is what gives light. The Torah is what removes perplexity, not philosophy. And that's the pasuk, ki ner mitzvah v'Torah or. And that's what he means in his book, Or Hashem.
And I will open the table for questions if someone wants to ask. We'll go in order. One second. We'll go from this one. All right?
Green.
Too good.
If
we take out a style from Rambam, at Hasdai, Crescas would be happy?
If we did what?
If we think about Aristotle from the Rambam, would the Hasdai Crescas be happy? Would it have no criticism of the Rambam?
Now that is a very good question.
How can you
The reason it's a very good question.
After you write such a harsh thing, it's a good question.
No, it's a fantastic.
take it out.
Why is the question such a good question? Because lots of times people will ask when you give a talk about the Rambam, or students will ask about the Rambam. But how can you possibly read the Rambam in the 21st century when he's talking about the Galgalim and the Arba Yesodot and science of Ptolemy and science of this? And the answer is that Rambam is speaking in terms of principles, and you can substitute Newtonian or Einsteinian or Copernican science for 12th century science and understand the Rambam. And not only that, but I usually say the Rambam when he talks about the notion of Yir'ah in more in the Vuchim, he speaks about the tremendous distances to the planet Shabtai, to Saturn, and it's something about 150,000 miles. No, much more than that. Maybe 100. Could he possibly say millions of maybe 150 million miles or something, whatever it is. And then you say, well, had he had Einsteinian science, he'd be even happier because of the Rambam. The Rambam certainly would have been happy with he would have been happy with Hasdai Crescas' universe, which opens up a finite universe to an infinite universe.
Only
right?
the ascension, not with the Copernicus view. No.
Right. Well,
He would not have been able to work with Copernicus in his views. No.
Rambam.
Yeah.
I think there are certain major basic scientific ideas that the Rambam has. The Rambam is not really committed to Aristotelian physics or Ptolemaic astronomy. He's committed to the search for truth, the search for knowledge, right? And therefore you can take the things that the Rambam says and you just translate Aristotelian science for Newtonian science or Einsteinian science. And I think the Rambam would be very happy.
How is the answer for this question?
So that's why. No, that's not an answer to the question. That's explaining why. That's explaining what exactly. That's explaining. That's explaining why it's a good question. That's explaining. That's explaining why it's a good question. But now, what was that good question exactly? How does he?
The question was, if he's so harsh against the Rambam.
Oh, if you took the Aristotle out of.
Say that throw away the Rambam.
Newton, how it works.
Isn't that? But in a sense.
Maybe he's only talking very, very harsh language. But at the end of the day, he still needs the Rambam. He still needs the Mishnah. He still needs the Moreh Nevuchim. It's just like a lot of times when you want that you should learn it his way, you write very criticism. Or no, he really wants to throw away. Said, don't learn the Moreh Nevuchim, only learn my Sefer and finish.
But he's also a philosopher. No, isn't there Ḥasdai also a philosopher?
Yes. So I would say this. That we
need to figure out what is his philosophy. Then we'll ask the question again.
And that we'll see. With that we'll see. We'll talk about his view of the universe. Then the third class about the Ibur. But let me just say this: he has what's basic in his view of the universe is that it's an infinite universe with an infinite amount of worlds in the Rav Hasdai, infinite amount of worlds in the universe, and an infinite universe as opposed to Aristotle's finite universe. It's an infinite universe.
Why does he think the Rambam has a problem with that? The Rambam is gonna change.
The Rambam won't have a problem.
So why is he so against the Rambam? What does he care? The Rambam doesn't care so much. It has to be Aristotle's view.
You would accept Einstein also?
That's what I'm trying to understand. Why is he so against the Rambam? Why is so different meaning? If he's gonna say, let's say, okay, why did you go after the Yevani? I have a better plan. Say that. Take your plan. I have no problem. Why is he so harsh against the Rambam? But we'll figure out. Maybe I'm asking too
No,
too early.
yeah, but
too early to ask the question. Maybe
it's a very good question because basically we're saying what's the difference between Rav Hasdai Crescas and with the Rambam? They're both doing philosophy.
Looking for the truth. Because his philosophy comes more like he's saying, I'm gonna say it through the Torah, but it's not true. Really, it's thinking. Yeah, he's coming with other. So what's the difference?
But the Rambam also is coming through the Torah.
That's what I'm
He's giving it a different interpretation.
Yeah, so no, because he's saying, no, the Rambam took the Yevani and put it into the Torah. And I'm going to think myself, because he came up himself with a new
Is it himself
plan,
or is
yeah?
he taking Plato?
No, not so much Plato, but it's true that he got it. His views are similar to views which are going on in Paris and Oxford. And,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so why does he think that he is less Yaldai Goyim you're speaking than the Rambam?
Who are his
This I never
leaders?
understand that.
Exactly.
I'm asking, is it gonna? I don't want to ask a premature question. So I'm asking, is it gonna be answered?
The question is, did he come up with new views or the
No,
new
he
views?
said
The found pre-existing.
Yeah, it was the same time.
That was the same
And that
time.
was the
Today,
error
modern-
of that.